Hi, I'm Nino Gonzalez, and welcome to another episode of Making Sense. Well, in previous shows, I've talked about career skills in order for you to improve your chances of getting the job that you want. And in the past, I brought in a past student of ours, John Summerford, and he's back again because he's gone through this. And not only that, but welcome, John, to the show. But we have some good news. Ever since the last show that you filmed, we heard that you finally landed a position with a large entity here in El Paso.
Yes. Quite happy to actually get that news. It was a lot of work getting there, but we finally got it.
Right.
Had to go through a pretty intense interview process. So I was keeping my fingers crossed.
Congratulations, and much success, and now using that education to help further yourself and your family. But let me ask you, how long did it take you? When did you graduate? In May?
Yes, I graduated.
And right now we're towards the mid-November.
Yeah.
So it took you what, about maybe about 6 months or so?
Roughly 6 months.
Yeah,
and
6 months.
Thing is, I was actually told by most people, you were really lucky because a lot of graduates were telling me, yeah, it took me a year to find a position. And I keep hearing that story every time I talk to somebody. And a lot of people were telling me, dude, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You're doing a lot of pressure to push yourself. But the thing is, that's just how I am. I don't
that's
stop.
great. Congratulations. But one of the things that we covered last time on the show was we did a whole show on the personality testing.
Yes.
And I said, well, let's do another show since you've gone through this and I've gone through some sort of interviewing process as well. And let's talk about the most common interview questions, and let's talk also about another tool that a lot of employers are using, which is the STAR method.
Yes, sir.
And also the elevator pitch. So let's talk a little bit about the STAR method, and that's they give you a situation, they want you to
Perform a task,
the action, and then the results. Right. And they try and formulate that in questions, like they pose some sort of an example, even if it's at a job that you're currently doing, and they want to see what the situation was, the task that you did, the action that you took, and the result that happened.
Yeah. See, when it comes to the STAR method, it's not just as simple as situation, task. What you want to do is really get into the details of each part of a STAR method, while in every detail creating another STAR method within that STAR method.
Okay.
That way you're getting multiple stars.
Right. Like, for example, I saw this played out by, I had a recruiter from one of the major companies talk to one of my classes, and he did this with a student, and he brought the student up and asked him, well, what is it that you do? And he told him, well, that he was a tutor with the El Paso Independent School District, and then so he started developing this. Well, what is it that you tutor the subjects? How often do you do it? What actions do you take, especially like involving the student, involving the parents also, and then the results. What were the results of that method that you did, even though it doesn't apply to this job, but it shows you the development process of going from a situation to the end result.
Exactly. And another thing they want to hear is you have to go in depth when you're explaining these things, because, for example, I could be explaining something to you that you have no clue about. Right. So if I'm just being blunt and just saying, oh, I did this, this, and this, I'm not going to understand what you're talking about.
And what they want is for you to quantify it. And one of the things is, okay, I increased sales. Okay, by how much? Give me a figure. I increased it from this year to this year by this percentage, or by this many dollars. Or in my classes, I improved my retention rate. Well, by how much? Over several years, I can demonstrate how many students I have retained and what actions I've taken to retain more students instead of having them drop out.
Exactly. Just like I said in the last show we did, it's all about metrics. They want to hear numbers.
Right.
The more numbers you're throwing at them with precision, they're going to be more interested, because that's how they're going to check their own results.
Sure. Yeah, everything is coming down to an evaluation purpose. And now another thing that I found interesting, and I've heard this a lot, several years back, is the elevator pitch. And we were talking about this, on the way over here, and you've never heard of an elevator
Yeah,
pitch.
it's a new one to me, and I'm actually very interested to hear this.
Well, the elevator pitch is basically what if you're taking an elevator ride, and there's somebody in that elevator that you want to impress, you want to meet, you want them to know your name, so forth.
Like a girlfriend?
No, not like a girlfriend, but we're talking maybe a business owner, maybe a CEO, maybe
Possible hiring manager?
a hiring manager, and you know that they're in that position, and how would you sell yourself? Because you only have that time from when you get into the elevator to the final destination, whatever floor you're going to be able to sell yourself. And what they advise you is have an elevator pitch. How are you going to demonstrate yourself and express what is it that you can do and how you can benefit in order for them to give you the interview.
See, and I actually went through something recently like that with this actual final job interview, where they actually asked me, okay, we're going to ask you so many questions in so much time, and you have to answer them all in that amount of time.
Right.
So me, knowing that I was actually doing the elevator pitch, you just explained it to me.
Right. Yeah, and that's basically about it. And because usually you can sell yourself within a minute.
Yeah.
That's it. And people are going to form first impressions within that minute, whether they want to talk to you further or not. So you don't have much time in order for you to sell yourself, and that's why elevator pitches are great. And I did this with a grant proposal here at the college several years back when I was an advisor for a student organization, but they wanted elevator pitches for the grant. And I only had like 5 minutes to tell the board of this organization why we should get that grant. And so I had to present, the reason, the purpose, what it was going to be used for, the results, measurable results, and what actions we were going to take to do that.
Basically using SMART goals in a sense.
Basically using the STAR method or the SMART method, and that's basically what it involved.
Indeed. Now, when it comes to actually answering these questions, research is really important. Like when you actually even apply for a company, do the research, because that way you could actually know about the company, and any answer you give, make sure it's relevant to what they're looking
Right.
for.
And one of the things that I suggest is, especially with community colleges and universities, they all have career centers. And in one of the past shows, I've had somebody from Career Services come here, and they'll do mock interviews. Yeah. And they'll sit down with you and go through questions, whether it's questions they have, or maybe you've heard these questions out before, and you can tell them, ask me these questions and rate me on how you think I did. And they'll videotape you, so that way you can view yourself. Not only that, but your movement. Are you playing with your hands a lot? Are you twiddling your thumbs?
Are you making eye contact?
Are you making eye contact? Do you have a friendly gesture on your face? What is it,
Yeah. I mean, they're going to look at everything down to, the way you dress, the way you groom yourself. I mean, certain companies are really picky because you're going to be representing that company.
Right.
So you got to be on your A game.
One thing that I had never asked you, and was your hair length. Just something. Was your hair length ever a factor in you getting hired?
You know what? Actually, no, because I've always tended to keep myself well groomed, clean shaven. I keep my hair tied back. I mean, not just because of jobs, because there might be somebody interested in you.
Okay, all right.
But it's never been an issue with me, but it also for the positions I've applied for, it's never been considered.
It's never been addressed.
Yeah, but I could see it. Say you land a job with some form of major government entity or a sales company, that might make it more of an issue because you're going to be out there dealing with possible clientele.
Sure. And another also issue that we run across is, of course, tattoos, body art.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming
it's a
second
trend.
nature, where before it was like, oh, that individual has a tattoo. Now it's almost everybody does. But that could affect their hiring capability, especially if it cannot be covered
Yeah.
And they're dealing with the public, and depending on what sort of setting they're working in.
See, and the thing is, I've never found any issue with people having tattoos, but I do have to say that think about what you're about to do and your own future career goals
Right.
before you get these things, because they might be meaningful to you, but they might hinder any possibility for future chances.
But usually what happens is that these individuals usually sometimes get them when they're very young,
Yeah.
maybe at 18, 19 years old, without them even considering what they're going to be doing maybe 5, 10 years down the road.
Yeah. See, and like a lot of people, they tend to really go overboard with it, and we're all young. We all make mistakes at times, but you really gotta
Choose.
choose.
Be wise.
Yeah.
Yes. And so another thing that we were mentioning is one of the questions that always comes up is, where do you see yourself within this company? And you brought up a real interesting thing that you came across is, and you want to explain that?
Yeah, this is actually called the 30, 60, 90-day plan. What you want to do is start explaining to them what you want to do in 30 days. Say, like, general answer would be, oh, I want to learn stuff from the company. I want to learn how to do the job, what duties I need to do, start getting accustomed to it. At 60 days, you want to start kind of evaluating that you're doing it correctly, that you've...
What additional tasks you're doing,
Exactly.
correct?
And then at 90 days, you want to reevaluate everything you've done in those past 90 days and see how that could actually help you achieve further success within the company.
And where you can improve.
Exactly.
And where did you see this come up? In one of the
Actually,
interviews?
Yeah, I actually was talking to a recruiter during a mock interview because I
Right.
felt I really needed to hone up on my skills, because after 6 months and I just wasn't getting anywhere, and I knew
Right.
I had the potential to go really far with any company I got in, and I needed the help. And the thing is, don't be afraid to have these people help you out, because no matter how confident you are, you're still gonna have some kind of flaw that somebody's gonna nitpick
Sure.
at during an interview.
And especially in the community, especially with students, reach out to your professors for help. Ask them, do you have anybody who can help me, or can you help me, or could you guide me? Could you provide me a resource to help me do this better?
Yeah, I mean, the community college, the university, they all have these resources openly available, sometimes even available to the public for anybody to
Right.
just go and find out. Because for all you know, what you think might be the smartest thing to say might not even be relevant to what you're applying for.
Okay, well, we'll come back on the second half and talk about the most common interview questions and how you should respond on the second half of Making Sense. So stay tuned. Welcome to the second half of Making Sense, and we've been discussing here about different things that interviewers look at and how to proceed towards an interview. Now, let's touch on some of the biggest questions that they ask, and the one that you're always going to hear is, what is your greatest strength? How would you answer that?
Well, the thing is, you gotta look at it from the company's point of view. Is this strength relevant to
Right.
what they're looking for? So you don't want to go in there and just say, "Oh, I'm funny," when it's a law firm,
Right.
Or "Oh, I'm like such a nice guy," when you're like, "Okay, you're gonna be working for a mortician or something."
Right.
Like, yeah, it's like it doesn't make sense. What you want to do is, like I said, do the research, find out what they're looking for, and then kind of analyze your strengths, because everybody's got more than one strength.
Right.
Analyze your strength and pick the one that's more suitable for that position.
And the ones that you're good at also as well. For example, if you have strong writing skills and your position is going to involve a lot of writing, especially client memos, proposals, emails, maybe you should focus on that. Or if you're going to be in sales, then that's where you got to introduce what is your level in selling. How many years, that's where you mention, I've increased sales, on this particular product, or maybe I introduced this product to, and that helped the sales of the company go up by a certain percentage or a certain amount. And also, provide, for example, in accounting. In accounting, are you detail oriented? Because that's what we're looking for in accounting. somebody that is going to be detail oriented and be as, I guess, as perfect as possible, because we're dealing with money and with numbers, but being able to focus on a task that involves that skill.
Exactly.
Right. And then the other one is, what is your greatest weakness? You've heard that.
Many times.
How did you answer those?
I tried to kind of downplay it a bit,
Okay.
because you don't want to make yourself sound like not confident.
Okay.
Like, yeah, well, I have an issue with this, but I've always been able to overcome it.
Okay.
Like, say, oh, I get nervous talking to people, which not really, like, but I've worked on my interpersonal skills.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the weakness, but then you came back with something to help you overcome that weakness.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let them know that you're able to, compensate for any
Right.
weakness you have.
Yeah, and usually what they want you to say here is, don't say a real weakness. Make a strength into a weakness. Like, for example, let's say in accounting, I'm very detail oriented. I always want everything to be perfect, and sometimes I take longer on the job that is necessary, and before you know it, it's already 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and I'm still stuck doing this task. So that you're telling them that you're detail oriented, and because of that, sometimes you go over time. But that could be a good thing.
Yeah, because that might actually be something they
Right.
want.
That might be something that they want. Or, for example, here at the college with a lot of students, we have a lot of students that are English as a second language.
Yeah.
And they feel not confident in their language skills, and sometimes they give that as a weakness. And I tell them, okay, that's fine. If you're gonna give that as a weakness, follow it up on how is it that you're trying to improve. For example, well, my communication skills in English are not that strong. I think I have a heavy accent. But this is what I'm doing. I've joined a Toastmasters club to improve my speaking skills, or I'm only concentrating on trying to speak English at home so I can practice it and refine the language. So that's how you can turn that weakness into a potential strength.
See, I'm actually doing that right now myself, because my Spanish is mediocre at best.
Right. Okay. So what is it that you're doing? So
Speaking Spanish at home with my
because
grandmother.
you know probably where you're going to be working, you might be using
A lot of Spanish.
A lot of Spanish, correct? The third question that they ask is, tell me about yourself. How did you approach that?
Actually, I tried to keep it as professional as possible,
Right.
and give very few of my personal interests.
Right.
You don't want to go into big detail.
And that is perfect, because sometimes when I've had students go through mock interviews and I ask them, tell me about yourself, they start talking about, well, this is the year I was born, and this is where I went to elementary school
back in
and
the
high
beginning.
school, and I'm married and I have so many kids, and my kids do this and that. No, let's keep all of that personal stuff out and focus on your professional. So if you're a student coming out of college, let's start, well, I'm currently attending El Paso Community College or UTEP or whatever other university. I'm majoring in human resources or accounting, and my graduation date is this date, and know your graduation date.
Exactly.
Not like maybe. Know it. Know your graduation.
Be confident that you're going to graduate.
and tell them what organizations you're involved in, and what is it that you can bring into the company as that you possess.
Yeah.
Did you maybe you took extra courses in QuickBooks and you became QuickBooks certified, or you took extra courses in Microsoft Office and you became a certified user in Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
Things like
And then, especially if you're in an organization and you're in some form of leadership position, like
Right.
you're part of an honor society or fraternity or something, use that as leadership roles. Like I'm already in a leadership position. I have a ability to manage, my peers and stuff.
Right.
And that really plays a major role, especially when they look in long term for promotability.
Sure, and also look at your setting. Where is it that you're interviewing and your interviewer? Because sometimes they might have things there in their office that might be a same interest as you have. And so that way you get the interviewer also into your world. So, for example, if they're an avid Dallas Cowboys fan and they have Dallas Cowboy memorabilia, well, you can start discussing, well, I'm also a big Dallas Cowboy fan.
Kind of like that razor blade commercial where the guy shaves his head after he sees all the paintings of bald guys.
So you now bring that interviewer into your world, but again, let's try and avoid controversy, avoid politics. And keep it as professional as possible. But that also opens not just you up, but it also opens the interviewer up.
Exactly.
And hopefully that will go well.
Yeah, it makes them a little more comfortable with you. And another thing I want to point is, at the end of the interview, I found this information useful. Ask, just out of off the record, how was your interviewing skills? I mean, how was my interviewing skills? Like, did I do okay? Do you think I did all right? Because that's going to make you memorable to them.
Sure. And one of the things that they always ask is, at the end of the interview, do you have any questions? And we don't want to ask questions about salary or benefits or anything like that, but you want to ask questions relevant to your position and to the company. For example, well, can you tell me about some of the duties I will be doing on a daily basis? Is there promotability within the organization? Do you promote, for an employee to continue their education?
What they're looking for is
what other type of training do you offer that will not only help me but help me grow within the company?
See, when you're doing that, you're actually making yourself sound engaged. You're engaged in this. You want to sound like you're really excited about this.
Right.
You want to get more information.
And this is where you can bring also knowing about the company. For example, if you're interviewing with a company and you learn that there were 10 years here, okay? And then you could even ask the interviewer, well, I've noticed that this company has been here 10 years. And how long have you, how many of those years have you been here? And that interviewer might say, well, I've been here for the last 3 years. And then maybe you could respond back, well, within those 3 years that you've been here, how have you seen the company grow and develop within the El Paso community?
Yeah.
Things like
that. Yeah, I mean, you really got to ask these questions because you want an idea of where you're going to end up going.
And you want to stand out. Or, another thing is a lot of companies focus on community service, and especially if you have a big thing for volunteering and stuff like that. I saw that you sponsored this race. What other type of community activities are you involved in? Because I believe in giving back to the community and volunteering. See, and not only that, also puts you in a better place because you're focusing on the volunteering skills.
Yeah, because the volunteering skills are still skills that you've developed.
Right.
And once you throw those out there, because they might not necessarily be on your resume, but once you get them out there during the interview, you're like, oh, well, you have experience doing community service of managing this or doing that. They're going to look at that.
Right.
And that'll make you stand out even more.
Another question that's asked is, how do you handle stress and pressure?
See, that's a tricky one, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I handle it okay. What's okay? They're going to want to know, like, what I like to say is, well, I find that stress is a good motivator and kind of gives you a bit of synergy to actually get the job done, and gives you that kind of a time frame when you need it to get done, and it's a good motivator.
Right.
So start talking about that.
A good motivator, and sometimes it keeps you busy, on your toes. Also, another way to respond to that is, well, I know stress is always part of something, whether it's in a job, whether it's in personal life. But maybe what I try and do is try and minimize the stress and pressure by planning ahead and not getting into that pressureful situation and react. Instead of reacting, let's plan ahead. Yeah. Let's plan proactively to avoid being in that situation. So, for example, we have property taxes coming up due on January 31st, and I'm sure a lot of people that are viewing this show, they're saying,
they're freaking
how
out.
am I going to come up with that payment? But we know every year it's coming
Coming
up,
up.
and we stress and pressure about it, and sometimes we don't worry about it until the
The
week
last
before it's
minute,
due,
yeah.
you know? And that's where you're putting yourself into that stress and pressureful situation instead of making a plan on how is it that you're going to tackle this, and hopefully making that plan part of every year, because you know it's going to happen
Yeah.
every year.
Death and taxes are assured, you know, so.
And another one is and it goes back to where you mentioned that the three, what did you mention, the month plan?
Oh, 30, 60, 90-day plan.
Okay, 30, 60, 90-day plan. Sometimes they'll ask you, where do you see yourself in a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now?
See, the thing is, you got to have a plan for that, because one thing I've learned is they don't want to hear an open-ended question like, oh, well, I want to be somewhere in, you know, this kind of field.
Right.
Okay, well, what exact position are you looking for? That's what they want to know.
And you know, when I've interviewed students during mock interviews, sometimes they totally say like, well, I'd like to see myself, you know, maybe owning a small business. But you know, if you're going to own a small business, why would I want to hire you and take the time to train you and invest this money in you when you're planning on leaving?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you want to say is, I plan to be with this company in an advanced position and grow and help this company move forward.
Yeah, you got to make yourself basically invaluable to them,
Right.
even in your goals.
And one last thing is, when you finish the interview, make sure you thank the interviewer, you know, shake their hand, and make sure you get their card. And when you get home, right away, handwrite a thank you note, and a professional thank you note. You know, thanking this interviewer for the time, for interviewing you, and you know, maybe pointing out, you know, I really learned. I really didn't know that the company was doing this. It was, you know, I was amazed to
Very
find out what
eye-opening.
is that they were doing, and I know that my skills can contribute a lot to this organization. And then just sign it and mail it, because that will probably put you in the front run, because there's a lot of individuals that do not send thank you cards.
Yeah, everybody's used to electronic email now, and they actually get a handwritten letter is
Right.
actually very personal, and it really makes you just stand out.
Yes, and you know, we were talking about that elevator pitch, and with one of the recruiters that came down to my class, he said that he saw this laid off Wall Street secretary. This was during the recession, and they interviewed her, and they said, well, and the news reporter asked her, well, what are you going to do now? And she says, I'm not worried. I can make any boss shine.
Wow.
And she said it with so much confidence. You know, that's your elevator pitch. I can make any boss shine. You know, now I'm really interested in talking to her.
Yeah.
So those little six little words, have a phrase that's going to describe yourself. Well, I hope this helps you in finding that job, or if you're confronted in a job interview with all these segments that we've done. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Making Sense. And congratulations, John, and thanks.
Thank you, Nino.